Welcome to the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you back to this episode of the Life Success Legacy Podcast. My name is Chris Bay, and you will notice I am not joined by any mics. We've tried to get Shelley to change her name to Mike, but she won't go for it. No. So, Shelley Forbis, if you were a client of Life Success and Legacy, you already know Shelley and adore Shelley like the rest of us. But if you're not a client, you're going to get to have the opportunity to get to know Shelley Forbis, who is our client coordinator. And I'm super pumped. Shelley is one of my favorite human beings on this planet. And as my wife calls her, my work wife. Because we work very closely and have for many years now. And it's way more than just business associates. I mean, we're like family. And so I'm thrilled, Shelley, that you would take some time to join us on our podcast. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's not my comfortable place, but I'm happy to meet with you.
I know. I know you'd rather be in the background, just taking care of people and doing all that stuff, and not have the attention focused on you, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah. But so let's go back. What we're going to talk about is really you and Todd, but your husband, Todd, but you and your family's journey with infinite banking and how this all kind of got started, and share with people. I think every time we post an interview, the number of views jumps up. And I think people love to hear the stories. Mm-hmm. They're like, yeah, but how does that apply to me? And when we tell stories, it's not the technical side of IBC. You know, we're not talking about PUAs and MECs and things like that. We're just telling stories about how people came to know about infinite banking and how they use it in their lives. So that's what we'd love to do, is just get to know Shelley and Todd's story and their family. You good with that?
Great.
Awesome. So take us back. Where was the first time that you kind of had an inkling about infinite banking? How did you get introduced to it?
The first time I ever had an inkling about it was a friend of mine that I worked with at the time was doing infinite banking, and she said something about it. I had no idea what she was talking about, but she and Chris Bay and Sean Bay and Todd and Shelley Forbis have a mutual friend who I'll refer to as Sweet Tea.
Yes.
Who started a little coffee shop in Olathe, Kansas. And we were dying to go see it because we knew it was something she dreamed of starting. And so Todd and I went to visit her at her new shop and met Chris Bay. And Chris started asking some questions out of genuine curiosity. Tell me about yourselves and what drives you, what do you love, what's your why? And Todd was like, what's my why? What do you mean? And not his language at all. But very quickly, we came to realize, wait, Sweet Tea's coffee shop is because of IBC. We knew that in part. But Chris started to ask us questions about you, Chris, about what if things were different? What if you didn't work a job you didn't want to work? And what if you dreamed about options? And it started piquing our curiosity, and we just started having this conversation. And before long, we're talking about the infinite banking concept, and that we don't have to do life the way we were doing it because we felt like we had to. And that is how we were doing life at that time. I have to have this job because it pays a certain amount of money to raise our kids. And I have to be in this work environment, even though I want to do something different. And we started learning with the infinite banking concept, possibilities really are infinite. And so we wanted to start learning about it. So that's where we had our first introduction. We didn't know anything still, but we realized we want to learn about what this is.
Yeah, I like to go around to random coffee shops and pepper people with questions about their life and their finances and things like that.
Well, you used the phrase earlier. Shelley's one of my favorite people on the planet. And likewise, for Todd and me, like I brag to our clients all the time. I work with the most amazing people in the world, not because of what they know, but because of who they are. And they genuinely care about people. I always get emotional too. Because I've not been in a work environment where that really is the case, where they genuinely care about the people they serve. And that stood out to me immediately. That these are people I can trust because I can tell they're not asking questions because they're nosy or trying to get something out of me. They just genuinely care and wonder how they could help. So that sucked me right into, I have to know what this is and why it seems special. I don't know why, but it seems special. And it is.
I often feel like we are masquerading as an infinite banking business, because when you pull back the curtain, it's more about how do you help people create the lives they want.
Absolutely.
And oh, by the way, there happens to be a financial element to many times to those stories.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, we have this really amazing concept that we teach on the side.
Yeah.
But so many times I think of a client of ours who lives in, used to live in Iowa and has moved since, Julie. And the first time I met her at a boot camp, and after the boot camp, we sat down and she's sharing her finances and all this stuff. And our conversation went way over here. And next thing I know, I'm talking to her about breakthrough, something that an experience you and I share together. And she ended up going through breakthrough, and I never knew if she was going to become a client or not. Mm-hmm. She did. But I love that about Life Success Legacy.
I mean,
that we're about people.
Yep.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, we teach this financial concept.
Yes.
Which happens to be amazing and transformational, but
it is.
So you started learning about IBC, and was that a difficult process for you? And what I'm getting at is kind of contrasting your mindset or what you were taught about money or not taught about money, and how your relationship with money growing up and all of that was compared to, oh my gosh, this concept is like way different than what I've ever heard about. Because that was hard for me.
It was not for me. And it's because I wasn't taught anything about money. Mm. So I didn't have a lot to unlearn. The only thing I knew about money was to be afraid if I didn't have enough, because I grew up without it. So I grew up really, really poor. And there's a lot of drama in my growing up years as well. But because of all of that, I'll just leave that as it is. But because of all that, there was no sense of security in any way, no sense of security, lots of fear growing up as a child about everything, including money, and watching my mom, because of fear in her life, trying to figure out how to feed 4 little girls, and live in a place that's livable, and never having quite enough to really make ends meet, and working really hard to not be able to make ends meet. So I grew up with that understanding that if you don't have enough, it's a scarcity mindset, truly a scarcity mindset. So when I did learn about IBC, and obviously, when I got a job and started learning how to manage money and got married, had children way too young, I did find myself still in that, perpetuating that same way of living. I did not want my children to grow up with. And not sure if I'm jumping too far ahead, but
you go with it, girl.
When Todd and I got married, I just kind of followed along with what he did because I didn't know what else to do. And his mindset as a farmer is to do what you got to do. You got to get loans all the time. And so while we didn't have land, debt was very comfortable for Todd because that's the only way you get what you need. And so we quickly found ourselves in a truckload of debt for us because our income was not huge as a young married couple with young children. And so we're incurring all this debt without enough income. And I started to get more and more fearful. Eventually, Todd and I were introduced to the debt snowball concept. Todd
Ramsey, debt snowball.
Ramsey, yes.
We did it ourselves. Yep.
Yes. And it did teach us a lot of discipline. And we finally were able to kind of get a grip, slow down that debt snowball at least. But I also could quickly see, oh my gosh, I don't see how we're ever getting out of this. And Todd hated it. He absolutely despised that whole idea. But
I believe I've heard him call him Dan Ramsey. Sorry.
I wasn't going to say that.
I'll say it.
He still does call him that because there's no fun. There's just no fun. And you can't have what you want. And there's no way to ever get what you want if you have all the debt that we had and not enough income. So anyway, but I also have this aversion to debt because I grew up with this scarcity mindset and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And we're going to pass it on to our kids. And I don't like that. And so I got pretty bold and strong. And I'm like, we're changing this. We can't keep doing this. And so we did get disciplined, and that's a good thing. But I also knew we were never going to get ahead and teach our kids something completely different. So the only learning I had was what we learned from Dave Ramsey. And so when we learned about the infinite banking concept, I got so excited because it was really easy to see. And one of the reasons I loved it is because it's so simple. It is ridiculously simple. So I'm like, got it, done, let's do it. Well, Todd, he has a great mind about money, except that his was more about how to finance things and make it work for you. But still, we weren't ever getting ahead. But he had this, he could not wrap his mind. He still has a hard time sometimes wrapping his mind around the infinite banking concept, but now he sees it. He sees it working and knows. So no, it wasn't hard for me. It was for Todd. So we kind of had to work through that. It took us a while.
I remember my wife, Sean, talking about and sharing her perspective on IBC. And she says the hardest thing, which I think you were ahead of the game in some ways, the hardest thing for her is emptying out the old learning to make space for the new learning.
Right.
All that noise, as Nelson would call it, that we've been listening to. It's been, we talk about the ruts in our brains, and we've created all these ruts, and all of a sudden there's a whole new pathway, and we've got to figure out how to get rid of those old ruts to make space for the new pathways.
Yes. I will say there is one piece that did have me stuck for a while is because I'm process minded and I have to know point 1, point 2, point 3 and how to get from each of those, right? And I hear this with our clients a lot too. And so this is why I want to say it. I can remember being at several boot camps because, like I said, it took us a while to get on the same page, but I remember being at several boot camps and seeing why it worked, but I didn't see exactly, okay, but what do I do step 1? What do I do step 2? What do I do step 3? Before we even were working on an individual plan.
Yeah.
And I wanted all of those answers before we even worked on an individual plan. And I can remember Mike Everett saying, just calm down. You'll figure it out as we go, but you're just learning right now. You don't have to know all of those. And that was very hard for me to not know, get exactly, wait, how do I take a loan? How do I use loan? How do I pay a loan back? Like logistically, what are those steps?
Yes.
That made me afraid.
Mm-hmm.
But that was really the only piece that tripped me up.
Yeah. So fast forward a little bit, you guys implement the infinite banking concept. I'm just curious, when did you start your first policy?
It was December 2016.
2016, okay. And so over this time period that you've had your system, can you just talk to the listeners about how you and Todd have used your IBC system? What are some of the examples you've used it for?
Yeah, the first example was we got rid of all of our outstanding debt very fast. And because of the plan that the team helped us put in place, I was able to leave my job, my career, which was a great job to have when I had it, but it was not at all what I love doing. So it gave me, just having the plan gave me the space and the freedom to say, I can walk away from this. And I did. So that was huge. That was part of our financial plan. There was a strategy to that. I didn't just leave. But the timing couldn't have been more perfect in terms of what our family needed. Our daughter was in need of some very urgent, incredible medical care. So I was able to focus my time and energy on that for a while, because of our plan, which helped us figure out how to do that. So we got Ashley taken care of. We turned debt. And really, we worked on capitalizing that one policy for the first 4 years before we learned about the income snowball concept as well. And we have now started working on that to create passive income for the future. So we have 5 policies, which is, they're all fully capitalized now as of this spring. Woohoo! Yeah. Looking forward to starting more, but we're using our banking system to fund our income snowball.
Kind of like your own personal, ever-growing line of credit that no one asks any questions about.
Yep. We actually, we just recently bought some office space that we intended to use, but we bought it just from our banking system. We didn't have to take a loan. We had cash to buy it, which was really cool, felt really great. We're also remodeling our home. And so we ended up deciding, you know what? We jumped the gun a little bit on this. We don't have capacity. So we actually just sold that space yesterday.
The building?
No, we did. I haven't told you yet. We sold it. Not because we just like, I can't think about this right now.
Too much of the irons in the fire.
Yeah. We actually do have another space that we'll be using with my father-in-law. So it's fine. But yeah. But it was really cool that we had the cash on hand to just do that and not have to go to the bank. And we were going to be pay ourselves back for it. And, just the power to make those decisions when opportunities are in front of you. Now we have to stop and think, wait, let's think about this. It's so easy to jump right into it. We need to still take some time to think a little bit more, but it was okay.
I'm reminded Nelson Nash talking about when you have capital, opportunities will find you.
True.
And there are, times in my life, and it sounds like for you as well, that there weren't opportunities. But now it is, you have to be discerning, right? Because you do have access to capital and opportunities present themselves. So now I have to decide, Sean and I have to decide, is this an opportunity we want to take? Is this an alignment with what we want and what we're creating?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious because you and Todd, like Sean and myself, come from, alternative universes and how we approach life and think and our behaviors and our personalities. Like that's what makes marriage so darn frustrating and exciting all at the same time.
Yeah.
What would you say for you guys? What have you found successful or help you guys thrive? And what would you suggest to maybe other couples who maybe come at things differently? I know for us, we have Sean calls them financial dates. And I think you guys have had similar meetings or whatever you call them. What are some of those things? Because you and Todd you view things so differently. How have you been able to come together?
Yeah, I don't think we could be any more different than we are, which you're right is frustrating and incredibly exciting at the same time. So one of them is, we've been married for over 30 years. And so you learn each other and how to communicate effectively or the best that we can. And one of the things I know about Todd is just be ready when he's ready. So I kind of have myself always in a ready spot. I'm ready to talk when you are. And so I'm always ready. I've got my charts and everything ready to go when he's ready. although sometimes he'll just ask random questions, and I don't have those charts pulled up. Like, we have to have a meeting. So you tell me when you want to meet, because we need to look at all this together. I can't just rattle these out of memory. But we do, when he starts thinking about things and getting excited about, how soon can we pay off this piece of land? When we use our banking system to do that. So then we'll sit down and just talk through things. Wish we would have done that with the building too, but we didn't. We jumped right in. But we'll look at all of our information and, when are our next premiums due? How much cash value do we have now? What will we have when we pay our next premiums? Because it will grow. What's the smartest thing to do? And we also utilize our coaches when we need to. And we just, a lot of times, things that we think we want to do in terms of paying off land or buying a piece of equipment or whatever, we can step back from what used to be an emotional decision and actually see the numbers in front of us and compare, if we do this, here's what will happen. But if we do that, our money will grow. So should we wait on that? And here's a for instance, when we left the Kansas City area to move to where our farm is in Northwest Missouri, our mortgage was cut by like 70%. Like, we paid 30% of what we were paying before. And I joke around and say we live in a tiny home. It's a ranch style home. It's not a tiny home, but it's a little home in rural Northwest Missouri. And it needs some updates and all of that. And for the longest time, and I just made you laugh every time, I know, because we would waffle back and forth between, let's build something out in the country versus, no, let's just fix up what we have and stay here. Do we really want a huge property? And do we want to be tied to a huge mortgage in rural Northwest Missouri? What makes the most sense? And we've just gone back and forth and back and forth. And we really have settled on staying where we are because it gives us so much freedom. I'm not saying it would have been wrong to build. That would have been fine too. It could have been folded into our plan, but we start to see what's more important to us, and having freedom to go where our grandchildren are. We only have one now, but we plan to have many.
I like it when grandparents talk about, we plan to have many
We plan to have
grandchildren. Seems like there's some other players in that performance.
They're irrelevant, but
irrelevant. Small roles.
Right. We like having the freedom to be able to go on a camping trip with all of them, or just to go hang out, or to go help take care of somebody who's sick or whatever, and not have to worry about the bigger monthly expenses that aren't earning us anything. If we used to think a home was an asset, and it's not. It's a liability, and we don't want to be tied to a bigger liability. Unless it becomes something that can make us some money somehow, maybe we'll do that. But so that's how we kind of make those decisions based on, is it expanding our freedom and helping us grow into the future that we want to have for our family, or does it hold us back?
I want to get to family, but there's something that you were talking about in all these choices and everything. And Corey Shear is a friend of ours and a consultant who we have tapped into. His organization is called Trust Centric. And he asked Mike Everett and myself one day, and I don't even remember the context, but he asked us, what is our definition of wealth? And as we were all discussing, kind of where we landed was wealth is having options. Yeah. And I get to see that up close and personal. On Wednesday afternoons, I get to volunteer at a food pantry, and I get to see the lack of options.
Where?
And so anyway, I think, one of the things about Life, Success, and Legacy is we want to inspire financial hope and freedom. Mm-hmm. That is wealth. That is options. It's not that we are so money driven or anything like that. I mean, we have clients who are crushing it compared to what we're doing with our system. I mean, they're building so much passive income, it's ridiculous. That's not me. I find joy in simplicity. I find joy in helping people. I'd rather spend my time doing this with you or coaching a client than researching the latest and greatest return on investment stuff. That's just not me. Now, we may lose some clients that are like, what is he talking about? But honestly, that's not me. That's not what motivates me. So I like that definition of wealth being having options.
Yeah.
So let's go to family.
Okay.
So you now have multiple generations, and I'm curious how that has played out, how IBC has played a role with you and Todd's adult children, and even then to grandchildren.
Yeah.
And maybe to an extent, even older generation.
Yeah. Sure. So, gosh,
That's a lot, isn't it?
a lot. Yeah. I will say, I won't go into his story because it's his story, but Todd's dad did learn about the infinite banking concept and could very much see the value in that. And, we took him through that process, and there are ways that it helped him for sure. And that's the story I don't really want to tell, but I will say he definitely, it has been helpful to him. And he and Todd still work together with all that. I kind of removed myself from it. You've talked about how, with family, it can be kind of hard to navigate that well, but it definitely has been for sure a blessing in his life and very helpful. My son, Logan, amazing guy, has a background in wealth management, specifically with on the insurance side of things, property and casualty, so risk stuff. And at first he thought, Mom, what he actually said, what are you doing? You need to bring your money to our company and we'll just manage it for you, blah, blah, blah. And I agreed I would talk with him more about it if he would learn more about IBC. And it took a while, gosh, I think a couple of years before he even came to a boot camp. And I remember Mike Everett even saying, I sense Logan might have the arrival syndrome just a little bit. He does. But at one point, it all clicked with Logan, and he realized, I really need to be serious about looking at this. And so he and his wife, Alex, have far surpassed Todd and me in our plan. And they actually, well, I don't want to tell their story either, but they have an amazing plan that they can choose to work in not too many years from now, like less than 10 years from now. They could choose not to work if they wanted to. Now, they're not the kind who wouldn't work. They'll always contribute to society in a very big way, but they won't have to. They have an amazing plan, and I'm so...
Options. Again, wealth. They have options.
Yep, they do.
Yeah.
And then, so my son-in-law and daughter, so they're in a situation where they're not insurable. And so we're not able to insure them, but my granddaughter, we can insure. And we have, as soon as she was born, we got a policy started on her because, having a child who can't be insured makes you kind of think differently about how soon this should get done. And so we kind of tend to be preachers at Life Success Legacy about, oh, you have little ones, get them insured today, right now, because you never know what tomorrow holds. And that's maybe a fear situation that I have always going on in my brain, but I don't think it's fear as much as I think it's just smart to get that coverage.
I've seen it enough. I mean, I've experienced it. Mike Everett has experienced it with his grandchildren.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give example after example of kids that cannot get insured.
Yep.
Or adults that can't get insured and don't have insurance. And so, yeah, we do preach.
Yeah, we do.
We get on our soapbox about that because it makes a difference. Just this week, we had a kiddo, a grandchild that was denied.
Yep.
And, to some degree, it's heartbreaking. especially as you go into the future and you think about, okay, that kiddo is someday going to get married, right? And if they can't get insurance, what does that mean for their family if something were to happen to them? Besides the whole IBC thing.
Yeah. But there, the hopeful thing in the middle of all of that, the fact that we can insure and did insure Capri still gets her family started right now. And that's one of the things I tell clients, when we have to give them the hard news that this child's not insurable or you're not insurable, so your child can't have that death benefit assurance on your life. But because of IBC, there are options. It's still infinite. Even if you're not insurable, there are still options. And so I just always like to mention that. So even for my son-in-law and daughter, if they decide to learn about IBC and ever implement it in their lives, there are options.
Mm-hmm.
We won't go into that here, but I'm thrilled that we've got a policy going on my granddaughter, and we talk about it. She's only 3. And I bought Beaver the Banker, the book that I learned about. And the author was there, and Mike Everett knew her, and he went and grabbed a book from her. And I'm like, I need that book. And so I jumped online and got it for her right away. And we just read it this trip. I was there last week and we read it, and she loves that book. She loves beavers, and she hadn't ever heard about banking and what is this about. So she has no idea what I was saying, but she's being introduced to the words. So she won't grow up having to unlearn anything to make space for IBC. It's just going to be a given.
Mm-hmm. So tell our listeners a little bit about Capri, because sometimes Capri in our meetings will pop up on your lap and engage with us. Really, she just wants grandma, right? What does she call you?
Gigi.
Gigi, that's right. Gigi. She just wants Gigi to get off her computer and come play, right?
Well, yes, but she also, she does now because she's associated the fact that work takes me away from her. But, I got to help take care of her for the first 4 months of her life. Most of our clients know this, either because I've been there while I'm coaching them and she pops in, or because I just have to talk about her because I love her so much. But she grew up in front of the computer screen with me working. She was often right there with me. And so he gets it. This is part of our life, and this is part of the infinite thinking concept. And so, yeah.
Shelley Forbis, this conversation is so rewarding for me. Just listening to what you and Todd and your family have created and are creating, and then what you bring to the table for our Life Success Legacy clients. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine. In fact, I hate to do this, but I have to give credit to your husband who told me I needed to hire you.
In this conversation.
We'll do another conversation. We need a follow-up where we talk more about your role as the client coordinator within Life Success and Legacy. Okay. But the personal side, the story, the journey that you guys have taken is so fun to hear. It is just an absolute blast to hear. And I know our listeners are going to enjoy it as well.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story, even though I don't like telling it on the camera. But
is there anything else that you would want the listeners to know before we wrap this up?
I think I basically already said this, but it's a conversation that I find myself having frequently with clients is, especially people who have an accumulation mindset or fear of not having enough. I do hear that a lot. What if I can't pay that? It feels like a bill. What if I can't pay it? Or what if, whatever. There are so many what ifs. And I remember that feeling, all what ifs and all the fear. And IBC has really helped me understand money is just a tool. It really is just a tool, not to be played with lightly and taken lightly and, be irresponsible, but it's just a tool. And if you use it that way, and I've heard Mike Everett say this a lot, whether it's a little or it's a lot, it works the exact same way. And so if you live within your means and use money as the tool that it is, it will all work out. It just will. I mean, there's responsibility in the middle of all that. You have to, be responsible, have coaches who can help you think through stuff, use them, follow the plan. That's key. I mean, you can't just buy a life insurance policy and say, okay, I'm done now, let's see it work.
Yeah.
Actually, you take action. And I feel like once we had a plan and we're able to use it and follow it and take the action, fear just goes away because it does what it's supposed to do if I do what I'm supposed to do. That's really all it is.
The question people always ask is, there's always a risk. What's the risk?
Yep.
And they kind of give us the side eye when we go, you are.
It's so true. It's so true. When you guys told us how to start, we did not do it the way you said. We did it half of what you said. And it's fine because it still worked the same way. But dang it, it could have worked better. Todd and I kick ourselves all the time. We should have done what they said. And that is just absolutely the truth. And now working with Life Success Legacy, I see the sausage get made. I see what happens on the back end. And I hear everybody talk about, no, let's give them plenty of room. Let's be sure we don't cut them short here. Let's be sure we help.
You know how conservative we are.
So conservative. And if I would have realized that back when we got started, but my fear of not having enough to live and Todd's fear of not being able to do everything he wants to do held us back. And so, yeah, I think trusting the process and following it and, doing what the plan says. You've got to do what the plan says. And you don't have to be afraid. Money's just a tool.
Even though Mike Everett didn't do what his plan was supposed to do the first 3 years of his plan, it still worked.
Yeah.
It'll work better if you follow the plan.
Totally.
Oh, my friend, this has been so fun. Thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone and stepping in front of a little camera. I appreciate that so much. And I look forward to our next one where we start talking about your role within Life Success and Legacy. To our listeners, we want to thank you all for joining us at the Life Success Legacy podcast. Check us out. Our website is lifesuccesslegacy.com. We have tons of resources. So whatever your learning style is, whether it's listening, whether it is reading, if you like to kind of study on your own, we have a learning kit. We have lots of resources for you. Or if you prefer to talk, then just reach out to us. We have a contact us button on our website. And if you want to talk with one of us, we'd love to do that. You can also sign up for webinars that we do usually 2 times a month or so. Mike Everett typically does those. It's kind of an introduction and a summary of the Becoming Your Own Baker book. And then our deep dive learning is our boot camps, which we do about every 6 weeks. That is a 2.5 to 3 hour deep dive into infinite banking. We recommend you do some pre-learning before you get to that. Do the webinar, read Nelson's book, etc., before you jump to the boot camp, because that would be like jumping into calculus and you don't know your math facts yet. Right? So to our listeners, thank you again for joining us, and we will catch you next time on our Life Success Legacy podcast.